In this video, I'm going to be reviewing Montblanc's Irish Green ink. I'll go over the specs, I will do an ink test, and I'll tell you what I like and don't like about this ink coming up. Blake here with Blake's Broadcast. On this channel, I review fountain pens, paper, and ink, and as always, I put links in the show notes in the description below, and if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps out my channel. Alright, let's get on with the review. So, this is a bottle of Montblanc Irish Green ink. I've been using Montblanc ink for about as long as I've been using fountain pens. Montblanc inks have been around and readily available for a very long time, so there's something that I'm pretty familiar with. Now, I don't have every ink, I haven't collected every discontinued one or their special editions, but generally speaking, their inks are very reliable, very well behaved, very safe. Now, I would be careful with their permanent inks. I think they're very good inks, but those do require a bit more maintenance. Now, the standard Montblanc ink bottle is one of my favorites. It's this 60 milliliter bottle, and this is, I believe, the current version. They had a previous one that was a bit more rounded in shape. This one I just think looks even better. I've heard it kind of described as like a shoe shape, like you almost have like a heel here, but it's a kind of a rectangular shape, and there's this dip in the middle. And what's great about this is when the bottle is getting low, you just kind of go like this, and this chamber down here fills with ink. So it's really nice. It's also very stable because it's not very tall, so very easy to fill, and you have this really nice looking cap here. They just do a great job with their packaging, and their new boxes and stuff for these are just really nice. Now, their limited edition inks, I don't think I've seen any in this bottle. They have round ones, they have like cube shaped ones, but I haven't seen them in this bottle, I don't think. So really this only pertains to the standard line. And now Montblanc also does have a higher end line of ink, which I have never tried. I think it's called the Elixir or something like that, and it's like $70 or $80 a bottle. I'd like to try one at some point, but that's a lot for a bottle of ink. They are made in Austria, and I don't know if they put expiration dates on their bottles of ink. I think they used to do that, and I think they might still do that with their cartridges. It was one of like the few brands that put expiration dates on their ink, which is kind of neat, but it's like, do they really go bad? I don't know. I still use some pretty old bottles of ink, and I don't have any problems with them. Now, if I see mold or the color's starting to look weird, then it's time to say goodbye, but ink lasts a pretty long time if you're careful with it. Now, in terms of the color, let's go to my writing sample here. So I'm doing this on a Papermind Cosmo Air Light hardcover notebook. This is my favorite paper for showing off ink, so that's why we're using it here. And we have two writing samples, one done with a logo, Lummi logo in a fine, and a Safari in a 1.9 millimeter stub. And the color of this ink, I think, is what I consider like standard green. When I think of green, this is the ink that I'm kind of thinking of. It's sort of the perfect green without going particularly yellow or blue. It's sort of right in the middle there. In terms of sheening, if you dump a lot of ink on the page, you can get some black sheen. Black sheen isn't the most interesting sheen. There is some shading, I would say medium shading. Now, interestingly, I did some dry times, and it took a while to dry in my tests, so I'm not 100% sure why it was such a slow dryer. I mean, at 45 seconds, it was dry. At 30, I was still wet on the bank paper and the Cosmo Air Light. And that surprised me because I've used this ink a lot, and I don't really run into issues with smearing it or it coming up onto my fingers after I've written with it. I mean, yeah, it's dry, but I guess maybe it is on the slower side, so that kind of surprised me when I was testing it, but in practice, it doesn't give me any problems. It's not like one of those inks where it's like live on the page forever, or until you accidentally swipe it with your hand, and then it's on your hand. Now, in terms of other papers, I do have Mitsubishi bank paper here, and we do get a bit of shading, pretty similar between this and the Rhodia 80 GSM. You know, obviously with Cosmo Air Light, you get the most amount of shading. It really looks quite nice, especially on this fine nib. You really get that dark and light there. Looks really good on Cosmo Air Light because Cosmo Air Light makes every ink look good. Here, you know, it's a little bit more flat green, and this is kind of the typical performance that I expect from this ink. Now, in terms of the price, $26 for a 60 milliliter bottle. It's not the cheapest ink. It's Montblanc, but they give you a really nice bottle. I will say that this ink is very similar, I think, to Kaweco Green. I no longer have a bottle of that, but I was comparing some old samples, and it's very close to that. Now, Kaweco ink is much cheaper than Montblanc ink. Their bottle isn't as nice, so it's kind of a trade-off between those two. And I'll put some ink swatch samples up on the screen so you can compare it. And I've been redoing all of my ink swatches, the ex-Compta Bristol cards, because I really like those and they're very easy to buy. And I noticed, you know, in my ink collection, because a lot of times I give away inks that I don't think I'm going to be able to finish or that just aren't right for me. And what I realized in doing that is I gave away all of my standard green inks. So I had like one of the Caran d'Ache chromatics that was very similar, and then I also had a Graf von Faber-Castell, maybe it's Viper Green or something like that. And those inks, along with the Kaweco Green, I think were actually the closest to this Irish Green. Don't have those anymore, so the swatches you're going to see are with ones that tend to be pulled a little bit more blue and yellow than this more standard green ink. Now, let's do some live writing here, and to do that, I'm going to fill this ink miser. This is the Kakimori steel nib. Oh boy. Montblanc. Could have done that a bit better. Yeah, it's just a really nice, clean, pure, I mean, they call it Irish green, and I think that's an appropriate name for it. Kelly green would be another one. Now, let's go over to the Kakimori pen nib here. Let's see if we can get more of that. There is like a nice shading here. You do get a blackness in the ink that I think is special, but you really do more see it on these coated papers like Cosmo Air Light versus uncoated paper like bank paper. You just don't see it quite as much, but the ink color is pretty cool. This is a Browse round shape nib, which is kind of a fun nib. And we can do the folded nib, which I'm not very good at using, but practice, I suppose. Just get a lot of ink down there. So let's let that dry, and then we'll take a closer look at that. So the water has mostly dry, and it ran a little bit there. We're losing a lot of the ink here, so I wouldn't say that this is a particularly water resistant ink overall. I do like the shading that we see, especially on this Cosmo Air Light paper, and when you really dump on it, you do get kind of a cool black sheen, which I do like. So what are my pros and cons for Montblanc's Irish Green ink? Well, for me, this is a very nice standard green ink. It doesn't lean blue or yellow like some other green inks. This is just sort of right there in the middle. It's well behaved. It's easy to clean out of pens. It has an average flow, so it will work with a lot of different types of pens. And I think that the Montblanc ink bottle, their standard ink bottle, is one of the best designs out there. It's very stable, and when the bottle gets low, it's very easy to still fill a pen because you can just tip the bottle and fill this little chamber here. Really good looking. Yeah, just one of the best ink bottles out there. Now, normally I don't really care about packaging when it comes to pens or notebooks or something like that. With ink, it really does matter because the bottle is something that you're going to be interacting with, and it really does make a difference. And a lot of times, you know, if you have a nice ink bottle like this, it's a nice item to have on the desk. In terms of cons, I don't really have a lot of cons. You know, if you're somebody that likes a ink with a generous flow, you know, this probably won't be your favorite. I did also notice some longer dry times. I'm not 100% sure why that was exactly. In use, I don't really have issues with the ink coming up off the papers. Other cons, you know, $26 for 60 milliliters. It's not the cheapest, but this is a Montblanc product and you do get a very nice bottle. So while that is on somewhat of the expensive side, I think it's totally justified here. And also, you know, if you want to refill this bottle, these are some of the best bottles I think to refill. They have a wide opening and again, just a pretty ink bottle. So if you finish this bottle, you could use a cheaper green ink that is similar, like Kaweco green. That's pretty much it. Do you guys have this ink? Do you like this ink? Let me know in the comment section below. And if you like this video, please hit that like button. And if you want to see more fountain pen, paper, and ink videos, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much, and until next time.